The fog rolled in off the Pacific like a living thing, thick and gray, swallowing the Oregon coast in its damp embrace. Port Hadley was the kind of town that existed in the margins, too small to be on most maps, too stubborn to fade away entirely. It clung to the rocky shoreline with the tenacity of barnacles, its weathered buildings painted in salt spray and time. The air smelled of kelp, diesel from the fishing boats, and the ever-present pine from the forest that pressed close behind the town. Lieutenant Commander Wyatt Kane stood at the edge of the town's single pier, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn canvas jacket. Early 30s, 6'2", with the kind of lean, corded muscle that came from years of relentless training. His face was angular, carved from sun and wind and 1,000 decisions made in the space between heartbeats. His dark hair was cut military short, his jaw shadowed with 3 days of stubble. But it was his eyes that told the real story, a deep, storm cloud gray that held a kind of exhausted vigilance, the eyes of a man who had seen too much and couldn't quite figure out how to unsee it. He was on mandatory leave, 30 days of decompression ordered by a Navy psych officer who had looked at his file, at the mission reports redacted in thick black lines, and decided Wyatt needed to remember what normal felt like. So here he was, in a town where his mother had grown up, renting a cabin that smelled of cedar and old coffee, trying to convince himself that the sound of waves was soothing and not just another kind of white noise to fill the space where memories lived. Beside him, sitting with the patient dignity of a sphinx, was his partner. Havoc was a Belgian Malinois, 85 pounds of trained muscle and unwavering loyalty. His coat was a rich fawn and black, his ears perpetually alert, his dark eyes scanning the environment with the same tactical awareness Wyatt carried. Havoc was a military working dog, trained in explosives detection and tactical assault, and he had been with Wyatt through 3 deployments. They communicated in a language beyond words, hand signals, subtle shifts in posture, the tilt of an ear, the tension in a shoulder. Wyatt reached down, his fingers finding the soft fur behind Havoc's ear. The dog leaned into the touch, a low, contented rumble vibrating through his chest. "Peaceful, huh?" Wyatt murmured, his voice rough from disuse. "This is what they tell us we're fighting for. Little towns, quiet mornings, safety." Havoc's tail thumped once against the weathered planks of the pier. The truth was, Wyatt didn't know how to exist in peace. He was built for war, trained for violence, honed into a weapon that protected others. Here, in this fog-wrapped silence, he felt like a blade without a sheath, dangerous, purposeless, and painfully aware that the world kept turning even when he wasn't holding it together. The town stirred slowly around them. A few early fishermen trudged toward their boats, their boots heavy on the dock. A gull cried overhead, its voice sharp and lonely. Wyatt watched them move, these ordinary people living ordinary lives, and felt the familiar ache of separation. He was among them, but not of them. He existed in a different frequency, one tuned to threat assessment and tactical response. "Come on, boy," he said, quietly, turning away from the water. "Let's get some coffee before I start thinking too much." They walked up the salt-stained street toward the town's single diner, a squat building with peeling blue paint and a neon sign that flickered even in daylight. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Wyatt chose a booth near the window, settling into the cracked vinyl seat. Havoc lay at his feet, head on his paws, but his eyes remained open, watchful. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a name tag that read Dolores, brought him coffee without being asked. "You're the one renting the Morrison cabin," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am," she smiled. "Military?" Wyatt nodded. He didn't elaborate. She didn't push. "Welcome to Port Hadley," she said. "Not much happens here. That's either a blessing or a curse, depending on what you're looking for." "Blessing," Wyatt said quietly. "Definitely a blessing." But even as he said it, his eyes tracked the movement outside the window, cataloging faces, reading body language, assessing threat levels in a reflex as automatic as breathing. Peace, he was learning, was harder than war. 3 blocks from the diner, tucked beneath the rusted overhang of an abandoned cannery building, lived a woman the town had learned to overlook. Her name was Emma Reyes, though most people didn't know that. To them, she was just the homeless woman with the dog, another piece of human debris washed up by the tide of bad luck and harder choices. Emma was 28 years old, but the streets had aged her. Her face was gaunt, her cheekbones sharp beneath skin that had seen too much sun and not enough food. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves past her shoulders, and her clothes, layered thermal shirts beneath a stained-down jacket, jeans worn thin at the knees, told the story of someone who lived in perpetual winter, even in summer. Her hands, though, were gentle, and her brown eyes, though tired, held a stubborn spark of defiance. She had been in Port Hadley for 6 months, arriving with nothing but a backpack, a sleeping bag, and a grief so heavy it had driven her 2,000 miles from the life she used to have. She didn't panhandle. She didn't ask for help. She survived on the edges, collecting cans for recycling, doing odd jobs for the fish processing plant when they needed an extra hand to clean the floors, sleeping in the spaces the town forgot. And she had Scout. Scout was a puppy, barely 4 months old, a scruffy mix of terrier and something else entirely. All oversized paws, floppy ears, and boundless, reckless joy. His fur was a patchwork of brown and white, his tail a perpetual metronome of happiness. Emma had found him 2 months ago, shivering in a cardboard box behind the grocery store, abandoned and half-starved. She'd given him half her sandwich and all of her heart. Scout was her anchor. In a world that had stripped away everything, her family, her home, her sense of self, Scout was the single, pure, uncomplicated good thing. He loved her without condition, without judgment, without the weight of expectation. When she woke up, cold and afraid in the pre-dawn darkness, Scout's warm body pressed against her ribs reminded her she was still human, still needed, still worth something. This morning, Emma sat on her sleeping bag beneath the cannery overhang, carefully dividing a protein bar into 2 unequal pieces. The larger piece she offered to Scout, who took it with delicate teeth and wagged his entire body in gratitude. The smaller piece she ate slowly, making it last. "We're going to be okay, buddy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "I've got that shift at the plant tomorrow. That's $40. We can get you real dog food, the good kind." Scout licked her face, his breath warm and doggy and perfect. Emma allowed herself a smile. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was real. She had learned to measure her life in these tiny victories: a meal, a dry place to sleep, a dog's unconditional love. She asked for nothing more from a world that had given her nothing. But the world, as she was about to learn, wasn't finished taking. The sound of the engine cut through the morning quiet like a chainsaw through silk. It was a diesel growl, loud and aggressive, tuned for maximum noise and minimum subtlety. Emma looked up from her makeshift camp, her body tensing instinctively. Scout's ears pricked and he rose to his feet, positioning himself between Emma and the approaching sound. A lifted, black pickup truck, its chrome grille gleaming even in the fog, rolled down the narrow service road that ran behind the cannery. The truck was expensive, aggressively masculine, with oversized tires and a light bar that could illuminate a football field. The windows were tinted dark, and bass, heavy music throbbed from speakers that cost more than Emma had earned in the last year. The truck slowed, then stopped. The engine idled, rough and impatient. Emma's stomach tightened. She knew that truck. Everyone in Port Hadley knew that truck. It belonged to Cody Brennan, the 25-year-old son of the town's wealthiest family. The Brennans owned the largest fishing fleet, half the commercial real estate, and the loyalty of the town council. Cody himself was a walking cliché. Too much money, too little supervision, and a mean streak that had been indulged since childhood. The driver's door opened. Cody stepped out, and Emma's heart sank. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of artificially perfect appearance that came from expensive gyms and protein supplements. His blonde hair was styled with product, his face tan and unlined, his teeth white as bleached bone. He wore designer jeans, a tight black t-shirt that showed off his arms, and boots that had never seen a day's real work. His eyes, pale blue and flat, swept over Emma with casual contempt. Behind him, two more men emerged from the truck. Tyler Marsh, stocky and mean, with a shaved head and a neck thick as a tree trunk, and Ben Collier, wiry and nervous, always laughing too loud at Cody's jokes, always looking for approval. "Well, well," Cody drawled, his voice thick with mock surprise. "Look what we found. Port Hadley's finest. Still camping out in our town, I see." Emma didn't respond. She had learned that silence was safest. She began gathering her things, moving slowly, trying not to provoke. "I'm talking to you," Cody said, his voice hardening. He took a step closer. "You know, my dad pays a lot of taxes to keep this town clean, and here you are, making the place look like a dump." "I'm not bothering anyone," Emma said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "I'll move." "Yeah, you will," Tyler rumbled, crossing his arms. "Question is, how far?" Scout, sensing Emma's fear, stepped forward. He was just a puppy, barely 20 pounds, but he placed himself between her and the three men. A low, uncertain growl vibrated in his small chest. Cody's eyes fixed on the puppy. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That thing yours?" he asked. "Please," Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. "He's just a dog. He's not hurting anyone." "Looks like a rat," Ben said, trying to get a laugh from Cody. Cody ignored him. He pulled a beer bottle from his jacket pocket, it was barely past 9 in the morning, and took a long drink. His pale eyes never left Scout. "You know what I hate?" Cody said conversationally. "Strays. Dogs, people, doesn't matter. They're all the same. They take up space that doesn't belong to them. They make a mess. And nobody does anything about it because everyone's too soft." He tossed the empty bottle aside. It shattered against the concrete. "Cody, let's just go," Ben said nervously. "We've got that thing at the marina." "Shut up," Cody snapped. His gaze remained locked on Emma and Scout. "I'm making a point." Emma's hands trembled as she clipped the makeshift leash, a length of frayed rope, to Scout's collar. "We're leaving. Right now. You won't see us again." "Damn right we won't," Cody said. He got back into the truck. Tyler and Ben exchanged a look but followed. The engine roared to life. Emma exhaled, relief flooding through her. She gathered Scout into her arms, feeling his small heart racing against her chest. "It's okay, baby. We're okay." The truck began to roll forward, and then, with a sudden violent acceleration, it swerved directly toward them. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Time fractured into brutal, crystalline fragments. Emma saw the truck swerve. She saw Cody's face through the windshield, saw the cold, deliberate intent in his pale eyes. She heard Tyler's bark of surprised laughter. She heard Ben's startled shout of, "Cody, what?" And she reacted. She threw herself backward, clutching Scout against her chest, her body twisting as she tried to get them both out of the path of 2 tons of accelerating steel. She felt the rough concrete scrape her shoulder, felt Scout yelp in surprise and fear. She felt the sickening thud. Scout's small body was torn from her arms with a force that wrenched her shoulder. The puppy's cry, a sharp, agonized sound that pierced straight through her soul, cut off abruptly as the truck's front tire caught him. "No!" Emma's scream was raw, animal, a sound torn from the deepest part of her being. The truck didn't stop. It kept rolling, the tire crushing over the small, fragile body with a wet, terrible sound. Then Cody hit the brakes, throwing the vehicle into park. The 3 men climbed out. Emma was already crawling forward, her hands scraping the concrete, her breath coming in ragged sobs. Scout lay on the pavement, his small body twisted at an impossible angle. His back legs were crushed, his ribs caved in, blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading, but his eyes were open. He was still alive. "Scout," Emma gasped, reaching for him. "Scout, baby, I'm here! I'm here!" The puppy whimpered, a sound so small and broken it barely qualified as sound. His front paw reached toward her, trembling, and then went still. Behind her, Cody's voice was amused. Guess he wasn't quick enough." Emma's world went white with rage and grief. She spun, still on her knees, her face contorted with tears. "You killed him! You killed him on purpose!" "Killed what?" Cody said, feigning confusion. "I didn't see anything. Did you guys see anything?" Tyler shrugged. "Nope. Just a stray that ran in front of the truck." Ben looked sick, but he shook his head. "Didn't see nothing." Emma tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. She collapsed back to the concrete, her hands covered in Scout's blood, her body shaken with the force of her sobs. "Please," she whispered. "Please, he needs a vet. Please help him." Cody walked over. He looked down at the dying puppy, at the woman covered in blood and tears, and his expression was utterly devoid of compassion. He was looking at garbage, at an inconvenience. "Maybe," he said slowly, "you should learn that this town doesn't belong to you. Maybe this is what happens when trash doesn't know its place." He turned to his friends. "Come on, let's go. We've wasted enough time on this." They climbed back into the truck. The engine roared, and as they pulled away, Cody leaned out the window, his voice carrying back to her. "Next time, it might be you." The truck disappeared into the fog, its taillights red and mocking. Emma gathered Scout's broken body into her arms. His small chest was still moving, each breath a labored, wet gasp. His eyes found hers, and in them she saw pain, confusion, and beneath it all, trust. He still trusted her. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, rocking him. I'm so sorry, baby. I couldn't stop them. I'm so sorry." She didn't know how long she sat there, holding him, whispering apologies and promises she couldn't keep. She only knew that when his small chest finally stopped moving, when his eyes grew glassy and fixed, a part of her died with him. The fog pressed close, gray and indifferent, and Emma Reyes, who had already lost everything, discovered there was always something more to lose. Emma didn't know how long she sat there on the cold concrete, Scout's broken body cradled in her arms. Time had lost meaning. The fog pressed closer, wrapping around her like a shroud, and somewhere in the distance she could hear the normal sounds of the town waking up. Car engines, voices, the cry of gulls, life continuing as if the world hadn't just ended. Scout's fur was still warm beneath her fingers. That was the cruelest part. He looked like he might just be sleeping, if not for the unnatural angle of his body, if not for the blood that had soaked through Wyatt's jacket and now stained her hands, her clothes, her soul. She had failed him. The thought circled in her mind like a vulture. She had promised to protect him when she'd pulled him from that cardboard box 2 months ago. She had whispered to him in the cold nights that she would keep him safe, that they would take care of each other. And she had failed. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, baby. You deserved better. You deserved so much better than this, better than me." Her mind replayed the moment in excruciating detail. The sound of the engine revving, the deliberate swerve of the truck. Cody's face through the windshield, not angry, not out of control, but cold and purposeful. He had looked her in the eyes and then looked down at Scout, making a choice, making a statement. You don't matter. Your life doesn't matter. This creature you love doesn't matter. Emma had spent the last 3 years learning that lesson over and over. After the accident that had killed her younger brother, the accident that had been her fault because she'd been driving, her parents had looked at her with that same message in their eyes. You don't matter anymore. The wrong child survived. She had left home because she couldn't bear to be a constant reminder of their loss. She had thought that maybe, somewhere else, she could start over, be someone new, someone who wasn't broken and guilty and undeserving of love. And then she'd found Scout. He hadn't cared about her past, hadn't cared that she was homeless, that she smelled bad, that she had nothing to offer but stale bread and a sleeping bag to share. He had looked at her with pure, uncomplicated adoration. He had made her feel, for the first time in 3 years, like maybe she was worth something. Like maybe she could protect something small and innocent. Like maybe she could be good. Now he was gone. And the message was clear. She couldn't even do that. Emma became aware of movement around her. A few early morning workers from the fish processing plant had gathered at a distance, their faces shocked and sympathetic but unwilling to come closer. She was, after all, the homeless woman, the outsider. Getting involved with her meant complications, and everyone in Port Hadley had learned to look the other way. One woman, middle-aged with kind eyes, took a tentative step forward. "Miss, do you need help? Should I call someone?" Emma shook her head. Who would she call? She had no one, no family who wanted her, no friends, no home, just a dead puppy and a heart that felt like it had been crushed under the same wheels that had killed him. The woman hesitated, clearly wrestling with her conscience, then slowly backed away. Within minutes, the small crowd dispersed. Emma was alone again. She looked down at Scout's small, still face. His eyes were half open, a thin film already forming over them. She gently closed them with her thumb, her touch infinitely tender. "You were the best thing in my life," she whispered. "The only good thing. And I couldn't save you. I couldn't save my brother, and I couldn't save you. Everyone I loved dies because of me." The guilt that had been her constant companion for 3 years wrapped around her throat like hands, choking her. Maybe Cody was right. Maybe strays like her didn't belong anywhere. Maybe the world was trying to tell her something over and over until she finally listened. She thought about the bridge at the edge of town, the one that arched high over the rocky shore. She thought about how easy it would be to just stop. Stop running. Stop failing. Stop hurting. And then, through the fog, she heard it. The sound of boots on gravel. Steady, purposeful, coming closer. Emma looked up, her vision blurred by tears, and saw a figure emerging from the gray. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a kind of controlled grace that spoke of strength and purpose. Beside him walked another dog, a large German shepherd, powerful and alert. For a moment, Emma's broken mind couldn't process what she was seeing. Was this another threat? Had Cody sent someone else to finish what he started? But then the man came closer, and she saw his face. Hard angles softened by concern. Gray eyes that held something she hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who saw her, really saw her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" And for the first time in 3 years, Emma felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone. Insert. After Section 9, Securing the Victim, Expanding the Training Montage. Section 9B, Rebuilding a Life. The morning sun broke through the fog for the first time in days, painting Port Hadley in shades of gold and amber. Emma stood outside the Seaview Motel, a cup of coffee in her hands, real coffee, not the watered-down charity kind, and watched Havoc sniff around the small patch of grass near the parking lot. She still couldn't quite believe this was her life now. 4 days ago, she had been sleeping under a cannery overhang, owning nothing but grief and guilt. Now she had a room, clean clothes, food that didn't come from dumpsters, and a future that extended beyond just surviving the next 24 hours, all because a stranger had decided she mattered. Wyatt emerged from his room across the parking lot, his movements economical and precise. He was always up before dawn. She'd learned that quickly, running some pattern around town with the kind of discipline that spoke of years of routine. "Mornin'," he said, his voice still rough from sleep. "Mornin'," Emma replied. She hesitated, then said what had been building in her chest for days. "Wyatt, I don't know how to repay you for all this. The room, the job, everything." "You don't repay it," he interrupted gently. "You pay it forward. Someday, when you're in a position to help someone else who's drowning, you reach down and pull them up. That's how it works." Emma nodded, her throat tight. Wyatt set down his own coffee and looked at her with those assessing gray eyes. "Today, we're going to work on something important. Situational awareness." "I thought we were doing that yesterday." "Yesterday was basics. Today, we go deeper." He gestured for her to follow him to a quiet corner of the parking lot. Havoc trotted alongside them, ever vigilant. For the next hour, Wyatt taught her to see the world the way he did. Not with paranoia, but with awareness. He showed her how to scan a room systematically, how to identify exits, how to read body language. Most predators choose victims based on perceived vulnerability, he explained. They look for people who aren't paying attention, people who broadcast fear or isolation. It's not about making you scared of everyone, it's about making you a harder target. He had her practice walking with purpose, with her head up, making brief eye contact with people they passed. You're telling the world you see them, that you're aware. That makes you less attractive as a victim. They worked on her voice, how to project authority when saying no, how to use tone as a weapon. Emma felt awkward at first, almost silly, yelling "back off" at empty air. But Wyatt was patient, correcting her stance, her volume, her intention. "Louder," he said. "You're not asking permission. You're giving a command. Again. Back off. Better. Again." By the time they finished, Emma's throat was sore and her body ached. But she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt powerful. Not physically. She would never be able to fight off someone like Cody or his friends in a physical confrontation. But mentally, emotionally, she felt like maybe she had some control over her own safety. "Why are you doing this?" she asked as they walked back toward the rooms. "Teaching me all this. You could have just helped me that once and left." Wyatt was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard experience. 5 years ago, I was on a mission in Syria. We were extracting a group of refugees from a war zone, 3 families including children. We had solid intel, a good plan, and a short window. Everything should have worked. He paused, his jaw tightening. It didn't. We were ambushed half a mile from the extraction point. Enemy combatants came out of nowhere. We fought them off, got everyone to the helicopters, but... He stopped walking, his eyes distant. There was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. In the chaos, she got separated from her mother, just for a few seconds. But a few seconds was all it took. Emma's heart clenched. A sniper shot her, clean through the chest. She died in my arms before we could even get her on the helo. Wyatt's voice was flat, emotionless, but Emma could see the pain carved into the lines around his eyes. I carried that for a long time. Still carry it. The question of what if. What if I'd been faster? What if I'd seen the sniper first? What if I'd kept better control of the civilians? That wasn't your fault, Emma said quietly. No, Wyatt agreed. The man who pulled the trigger was at fault, but the outcome was the same. An innocent person died while I was supposed to be protecting her. He looked at Emma, and his gray eyes held a fierce intensity. I can't save everyone. I learned that the hard way. But I can save the people right in front of me, and I can teach them to save themselves. That has to be enough. Emma understood then. This wasn't just about her. She was standing in for every person he couldn't save, every mission that went wrong, every innocent life lost despite his best efforts. "It's enough," she said. "What you're doing. For me, for everyone you've helped, it's more than enough." Wyatt nodded once, accepting her words without comment. Then his expression shifted, becoming businesslike again. "Come on, I want to show you something." He led her to his truck and pulled out a small lockbox from under the seat. Inside was a canister of pepper spray, a tactical flashlight, and a small air horn. "These are yours," he said. "The pepper spray is military grade, 12-foot range, causes immediate incapacitation. The flashlight is 1,200 lumens. Shine it in someone's eyes at night, they're blind for 30 seconds. The air horn is 130 decibels. You use it to draw attention, scare off threats, or disorient attackers. Emma stared at the items. I don't know if I can. You can, Wyatt said firmly, and you will, because men like Cody count on victims being too afraid or too unprepared to fight back. You're not going to be that person anymore. He spent another hour teaching her how to use each item properly, how to hold the pepper spray with her thumb on the trigger, ready to deploy, how to use the flashlight strobe function, how to carry the air horn where she could reach it quickly. These are tools, he said. They give you options. They give you time to escape. That's what this is all about, Emma. Not about winning a fight, about not being in the fight at all. You see danger coming, you move. You can't move, you have tools. You use the tools, you create an opening. You take that opening and you run. Simple. Simple, but also impossibly complex for someone who had spent years making herself small, trying to disappear. I don't feel brave, Emma admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Wyatt said. It's taking action despite the fear. You've already done that. You survived 3 years on the streets. You protected Scout for as long as you could. You filed that police report even when you knew it wouldn't go anywhere. That's courage. Now we're just adding skills to match what's already inside you. That night, lying in her motel room with Havoc sprawled across the foot of the bed, Emma thought about what Wyatt had said. About courage. About taking action despite fear. She thought about Scout, about his small trusting face, about how he'd never doubted her, never judged her, never given up on her even when she'd given up on herself. I'm going to be brave, she whispered into the darkness. For you, Scout, I'm going to be the person you thought I was. Havoc's tail thumped once against the bed, as if in agreement, and somewhere across the parking lot, Wyatt Kane sat in his own room, cleaning his service weapon with practiced hands, and allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this time he'd managed to protect someone who needed it. This time, the innocent survived. The day after Cody Brennan's sentencing, something remarkable happened in Port Hadley. Emma was walking to her shift at the marina, Havoc at her side, when she passed the bulletin board outside the post office. Someone had posted a flyer, handwritten, simple but powerful. Justice for Scout, community meeting. Tonight, 7 p.m., Community Center. Topic, accountability, animal welfare, and standing up for what's right. By 7 o'clock, the community center was packed. Emma stood at the back, uncomfortable with crowds, overwhelmed by the attention. But she'd been asked to come, so she came. Sergeant Morrison stood at the front, along with a woman Emma didn't recognize. Late 50s, professional, with kind eyes and the bearing of someone used to being heard. Thank you all for coming, Morrison began. I'm here tonight because something important happened in our town. Something that shouldn't have taken as long as it did. He gestured to Emma. Most of you know Emma, even if you've never spoken to her. She's been part of this community for 6 months, even though we didn't always act like it. And when she was victimized, when her dog was killed in a deliberate act of cruelty, we failed her. A murmur went through the crowd. The police failed her. I failed her. We allowed wealth and influence to cloud our judgment, to make us hesitate when we should have acted. That changes now. The woman stepped forward. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm with the Oregon Humane Society. I came to Port Hadley because of what happened to Scout, and what I found shocked me. In the past 5 years, there have been 12 complaints of animal cruelty filed in this county. Exactly 0 resulted in prosecution. 0. That's not a coincidence. That's a system that's broken. She clicked a remote and a presentation appeared on the screen behind her. Statistics, photos, case files. Animal cruelty is often a precursor to violence against humans, Dr. Chen continued. Study after study shows that people who abuse animals are significantly more likely to abuse people. What happened to Scout wasn't an isolated incident. It was a warning sign we should have heeded years ago. Morrison took over again. So here's what's going to change. Effective immediately, the Port Hadley PD is implementing a new policy. All animal cruelty complaints will be investigated with the same rigor as assaults against humans. We're partnering with Dr. Chen's organization to provide training for our officers. And we're establishing a community oversight board to ensure cases aren't buried for political reasons. The crowd erupted in applause. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. This wasn't just about Scout anymore. This was about every voiceless victim, every creature that depended on humans for protection and received cruelty instead. After the meeting, people approached her. People who had seen her around town, who had walked past her camp without stopping, who had looked through her as if she were invisible. "I'm sorry," a middle-aged woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "I saw you at the cannery once, and I walked past. I told myself it wasn't my business. I'm so sorry." "I should have done something," a man added. "We all should have. Thank you for being brave enough to push this." But Emma shook her head. "I wasn't brave. Someone else was brave for me." She looked around the room, half expecting to see Wyatt's tall frame in the crowd, but he wasn't there. He'd left town 2 days ago. His leave expired, his mission complete. But his impact remained. Final edition. Expand the epilogue. Section 15B. 6 months later. Emma Reyes stood on the small stage at the Port Hadley Community Center, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the microphone. 6 months had passed since that terrible morning at the cannery. 6 months since Wyatt Kane had walked into her life and changed everything. The community center was packed again, but this time it was for the official launch of Scout's Law, a new county ordinance that mandated stronger penalties for animal cruelty and required police to investigate all complaints within 48 hours. Emma wore clean clothes, jeans and a sweater she'd bought with her own money from her job. Her hair was cut and styled. She had an apartment now, a real one, with her name on the lease. She was taking online courses toward a degree in social work, thinking maybe she could help others the way she'd been helped. And beside her, sitting with perfect discipline, was Havoc. "I'm not good at speeches," Emma began, her voice trembling but clear. 6 months ago, I didn't think I had a future. I didn't think I mattered. And then I lost the one thing that made me feel like maybe I did matter. A puppy named Scout, who loved me, even when I couldn't love myself." She paused, gathering her courage. "Someone told me once that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action despite the fear. A man named Wyatt Kane taught me that. He taught me that I was worth fighting for. That Scout was worth getting justice for. That standing up to cruelty, even when it seems impossible, is always the right choice." She looked down at Havoc, who gazed back at her with steady, trusting eyes. "This law is named for Scout, but it's really about all of us. It's about choosing to see each other, to help each other, to stand up when we see something wrong, even when it's easier to look away. especially when it's easier to look away. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, Emma drove to the cemetery on the hill overlooking the ocean. She'd had Scout properly buried there in a small plot she'd paid for with her first full paycheck. The stone was simple. Scout, a good boy, a true friend. She knelt beside the grave, placing fresh flowers, daisies, bright and cheerful, the kind that reminded her of his personality. "We did it, buddy," she whispered. "We got justice, and we changed things. People are paying attention now. Other animals will be safer because of you." Havoc pressed against her side, offering silent comfort. Emma's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Heard about the law. Proud of you. Stay strong. WK." She smiled, typing back, "Thank you for everything. Where are you?" The response came a minute later. "Can't say, but thinking of you and Havoc. Keep fighting the good fight." Emma looked out over the ocean, watching the sun set over the Pacific in brilliant shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, Wyatt Kane was continuing his mission, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, standing between the innocent and the cruel. And here in Port Hadley, Emma Reyes was doing the same thing in her own way. Because that's what heroes did. They showed up. They stood firm. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves. Always. Wyatt and Havoc were finishing their patrol of the pier, a habit Wyatt couldn't break even on leave, when Havoc's head snapped up. His ears pricked forward, his nostrils flaring, his entire body going tense. "What is it, boy?" Wyatt asked, his hand instinctively moving to the empty space on his hip where his sidearm would normally rest. Havoc whined, a high, urgent sound. It was his alert. Something was wrong. The dog began pulling toward the south end of town, toward the industrial area where the old cannery buildings hunched against the shoreline. Wyatt's training kicked in. He didn't question. He followed. They moved quickly through the fog-shrouded streets. Havoc's gait was purposeful, his nose working the air. Wyatt's senses sharpened, his vision narrowing, his awareness expanding. Every doorway became a potential threat. Every shadow held possibility. They rounded the corner of a rusted building, and Havoc stopped, his body rigid. A low, mournful whine escaped him. Wyatt saw her. A woman crumpled on the concrete, her body folded over something small she held against her chest. Her clothes were worn, her hair tangled, and even from a distance he could see the blood, so much blood, covering her hands and jacket. He approached slowly, carefully, his boots making deliberate sounds so he wouldn't startle her. Havoc stayed close to his left side, his posture protective but not aggressive. "Ma'am," Wyatt said quietly, his voice low and even. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" The woman didn't look up. She rocked slightly, a rhythmic, unconscious motion of grief. He could hear her whispering something, a broken litany of words he couldn't make out. Wyatt came closer. His eyes tracked the scene with tactical precision. No immediate threat present. One civilian female, appearance consistent with homelessness. Visible blood, source unknown. No signs of external injury to the woman. The smell hit him then. Copper and death, the metallic tang of fresh blood. He knelt a few feet away, bringing himself to her level. "Ma'am, my name is Wyatt. I'm here to help. Can you look at me?" Finally, slowly, she raised her head. Her face was a mask of devastation. Tears had cut clean tracks through the grime on her cheeks. Her brown eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, stared at him without really seeing him. and in her arms, cradled like a child, was the small, broken body of a puppy. Wyatt's jaw tightened. He had seen death in every form war could devise. He had held dying men, had watched the light leave their eyes. But there was something about this, the small, innocent victim, the woman's shattered expression, that hit him with unexpected force. "What happened?" he asked, his voice gentler now. "They killed him," Emma whispered. Her voice was hollow, scraped raw. "They ran him over. On purpose. They laughed." Havoc moved forward, bypassing Wyatt's control for the first time in memory. The dog approached the woman slowly, his head lowered, his posture submissive and comforting. He pressed his muzzle against her arm, a soft, sympathetic whine escaping him. Emma looked down at the living dog, then at the dead puppy in her arms. A fresh wave of sobs shook her body. Wyatt stood, his mind shifting into operational mode. This was no longer just a tragedy. This was a crime scene. The blood pattern on the concrete told a clear story. Vehicular impact, deliberate positioning, no skid marks indicating an attempt to brake or swerve away. The small body's injuries were catastrophic and localized to the rear quarters, consistent with being run over by a heavy vehicle. Someone had done this intentionally. "Who?" he asked. "Who did this?" Emma looked up at him, and for the first time she seemed to actually see him. This tall, lean man with storm-gray eyes and the bearing of someone who knew violence intimately. She saw Havoc, the powerful German shepherd pressed against her side, offering silent comfort. "Cody Brennan," she whispered. "It was Cody Brennan and his friends, the black truck with the lights. They said—" Her voice broke. "They said strays don't belong here. And then he just—" Her words dissolved into sobs. Wyatt's expression didn't change, but something cold and final settled in his chest. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently touched her shoulder. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Emma," she breathed. "Emma, I need you to listen to me. I'm going to help you. First, we need to get you somewhere safe. Then, we're going to make sure this is reported properly. Do you understand?" She stared at him. "The police won't care. I'm nobody. He's rich. Nothing will happen." "That's not acceptable," Wyatt said, his voice flat and certain. "Give me your hand." She hesitated, then extended her blood-covered hand. He took it, his grip warm and steady, and helped her to her feet. She swayed, her legs weak, but he steadied her. Havoc pressed against her other side, supporting her weight. "We're going to walk to my truck," Wyatt said. "Havoc will stay with you. I need you to hold on to him, okay?" Emma looked down at the puppy still cradled in one arm. I can't leave him." "You won't," Wyatt said. "We'll bring him. We'll make sure he's taken care of properly." He took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around the small, broken body. Emma clutched the bundle to her chest, and together, with Havoc walking close, they made their way toward Wyatt's truck parked near the diner. As they walked, Wyatt's mind was already working. He cataloged details. He memorized the scene. And deep in the cold, operational part of his brain that he'd spent 30 days trying to quiet, a target was acquired. Wyatt's truck was a beat-up Ford Ranger, practical and unremarkable. He helped Emma into the passenger seat, securing Havoc in the back. The dog remained alert, his eyes fixed on Emma, reading her emotional state. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Police station," Wyatt said, starting the engine. "They won't believe me." "Then they'll believe me." The Port Hadley Police Department was housed in a low brick building that shared space with the fire department. Wyatt parked, helped Emma out, and walked her inside. Havoc remained in the truck, his posture watchful through the window. The officer at the front desk was young, early 20s, with a patchy beard and bored eyes. His name tag read Kramer. "Help you?" he asked, barely looking up from his phone. "I need to report a crime," Wyatt said. "Vehicular assault resulting in the death of an animal. Possible attempted assault on a person." That got Kramer's attention. He looked up, his eyes moving from Wyatt to Emma, taking in her appearance, the blood, the hollow expression. "What happened?" Emma recounted the story in a flat, exhausted voice. Wyatt watched Kramer's face as she spoke. He saw the moment the officer's expression shifted from interest to skepticism. "Cody Brennan," Kramer repeated. "You're saying Cody Brennan deliberately ran over your dog. Yes? And you saw this happen. I was holding him. Cody swerved and hit him on purpose." Kramer sat back, his expression closing off. "Ma'am, Cody's a respected member of this community. His family owns half the town," Wyatt interrupted, his voice cold. "I've heard. Does that make him immune to the law?" Kramer's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "A witness," Wyatt said evenly. "I found her immediately after the incident. The evidence is clear. This was deliberate." "Did you see the actual incident?" "No." "Then you're not a witness. You're just someone who showed up after." Kramer turned back to Emma. "Look, ma'am, I'm sorry about your dog, but without evidence, without other witnesses, it's your word against his. And I have to tell you, making false accusations against someone like Cody Brennan, that could get you in trouble." Emma's face crumpled. She had expected this, but hearing it confirmed broke something inside her. Wyatt leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk, his body language shifting from neutral to dangerous. "Are you telling me you're refusing to file a report?" "I'm telling you," Kramer said, meeting his gaze, "that without evidence there's nothing to investigate. Now, if you'll excuse me." "File the report," Wyatt said quietly. Each word was precise, carrying the weight of command. "Document the incident. Get it on record. Now." Something in his voice, in the flat gray of his eyes, made Kramer hesitate. He saw something in this stranger that made his instincts scream warning. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll take a statement, but nothing's gonna come of it." Wyatt and Emma sat through 20 minutes of bureaucratic indifference as Kramer typed up a report that he clearly had no intention of pursuing. When they finally walked out, Emma was shaken with exhaustion and grief. "I told you," she whispered. "Nobody cares." Wyatt stopped, turning to face her. "I care." She looked up at him, the stranger who had appeared out of the fog, and saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. His gray eyes held a cold, focused promise. This wasn't pity. This wasn't sympathy. This was something else entirely. This was a predator identifying prey. "Where's your camp?" he asked. "The old cannery, but I can't go back there. Not yet." "You're not going back there," Wyatt said. "Not tonight. Not until this is handled." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his limited contacts, and found what he needed. "There's a motel on Highway 9, the Seaview. I'm getting you a room for the week. You're going to eat, you're going to sleep, and you're going to let me deal with this. I can't afford—" "I'm paying," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Consider it done." Emma stared at him. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-won truth. Because someone has to. Finding Cody Brennan was easy. Small towns had rhythms, and men like Cody were creatures of habit. Wyatt spent 2 hours making calls, asking casual questions at the diner, at the marina, gathering intelligence the way he'd been trained. By early evening, he had everything he needed. Cody and his friends gathered every Thursday at the Anchor, a waterfront bar that catered to the town's wealthier residents. It was loud, it was public, and it was where Cody held court, surrounded by sycophants and admirers. Wyatt arrived at 8 p.m. He had left Havoc with Emma at the motel. The dog had bonded with her instantly, sensing her need, and came alone. He wore jeans, boots, and a dark long-sleeve shirt. Nothing tactical, nothing threatening, just a man walking into a bar. The Anchor was exactly what he expected. Polished wood, nautical decor, a crowd of people who had never missed a meal. He spotted Cody immediately, sitting at a high-top table near the windows, Tyler and Ben flanking him. Cody was drunk, his face flushed, his voice loud as he told some story that had his friends laughing. Wyatt walked to the bar, ordered a beer he had no intention of drinking, and waited. Patience was a weapon, and he had learned to wield it with precision. 20 minutes later, Cody stood, swaying slightly. "Taking a piss," he announced, heading toward the back hallway where the restrooms were located. Wyatt followed. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, and empty. Cody pushed into the men's room, and Wyatt was 3 steps behind him. Cody was at the urinal, humming to himself when Wyatt entered. He glanced over, barely registering the presence of another person. "Occupied, dude," he slurred. Wyatt walked to the sink, turned on the water, and began washing his hands. Slowly, deliberately. Cody finished, zipped up and turned, heading for the door without bothering to wash. Wyatt moved into his path. "Excuse you," Cody said, annoyance flashing across his face. "Cody Brennan," Wyatt said, quietly. Cody blinked. "Yeah? Who the hell are you? I'm the man who's going to give you one chance to do the right thing." Cody's confusion shifted to amusement. "The right thing? What are you, some kind of preacher?" "You ran over a puppy this morning," Wyatt said, his voice flat. "Woman named Emma was holding him. You did it on purpose, you threatened her. And then you left." The amusement drained from Cody's face, replaced by cold wariness. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Wyatt took a step closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this bar, you're going to go to the police station, and you're going to confess. You're going to pay for every veterinary bill, every trauma, every second of suffering you caused. And you're going to apologize to her." Cody stared at him, then burst out laughing. "Are you out of your mind? You think I'm going to confess to some homeless chick's story? Get out of my way." He tried to push past. Wyatt didn't move. "Last chance," Wyatt said. Cody's expression twisted with rage. "You don't know who you're messing with. My family runs this town. I can make one phone call and have you run out of Port Hadley so fast." "I'm not from Port Hadley," Wyatt said, "and I don't care about your family." Cody shoved him. It was a clumsy, drunken push, fueled by arrogance and too much whiskey. Wyatt absorbed it without moving, his body a wall of controlled force. Then Cody made his fatal mistake. He drew back his fist and swung. Wyatt moved. It wasn't a fight. It was a lesson delivered in 3 seconds. Wyatt's left hand intercepted Cody's punch, deflecting it effortlessly. His right hand shot forward, palm heel strike to the solar plexus. Cody's air evacuated in a single, desperate whoosh. Before he could double over, Wyatt's knee came up, catching him in the thigh, a precise strike to the common peroneal nerve that sent bolts of lightning down his leg. Cody collapsed, gasping, his face purple. Wyatt crouched beside him, his voice never rising above conversational level. "That's what real violence feels like. That's what you inflicted on something smaller and weaker than you. How does it feel?" Cody tried to speak, but his diaphragm was spasming. He could only wheeze. "I'm going to say this once," Wyatt continued. "Stay away from Emma. Stay away from anyone you think is weaker than you, because if I even suspect, that you've hurt someone again, I will come back. And next time, I won't stop at a lesson. Do you understand me?" Cody managed a frantic nod. Wyatt stood, stepped over him, and walked out of the bathroom. Tyler and Ben were waiting in the hallway, their faces alert. They had heard the commotion. "What did you do to him?" Tyler demanded, stepping forward. Wyatt met his gaze with flat, emotionless eyes. "He fell. You should help him up." Something in his voice, in his posture, in the cold, controlled violence that radiated from him, made both men step back. They watched him walk past, watched him exit the bar, and neither of them moved to follow. Inside the bathroom, Cody Brennan lay on the tile floor, coughing, tears streaming down his face, and for the first time in his privileged life he understood what it meant to be powerless. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. Wyatt returned to the Seaview Motel, expecting to find Emma sleeping. Instead, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, Havoc's head resting in her lap, her eyes red but dry. The small bundle, Scout's body, still wrapped in Wyatt's jacket, lay on the dresser. "You went after him," she said. It wasn't a question. Wyatt nodded. "He won't bother you again." "What did you do?" "I had a conversation." He understood my point. Emma studied his face, reading the controlled violence beneath the surface. "Who are you? Really?" Wyatt was quiet for a moment. He had spent 30 days trying to be someone else, someone normal. But the truth was, normal had never fit him. He was what he'd been trained to be. "My name is Wyatt Kane," he said. "Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy. I'm a SEAL." The words hung in the air. Emma's eyes widened, pieces falling into place. The way he moved, the tactical awareness, the cold, focused violence. You're a Navy SEAL?" Am. It's complicated." He sat in the room's single chair, his body settling into the posture of someone used to long waits and uncomfortable positions. "I'm on leave, trying to figure out how to be a person instead of a weapon. Turns out I'm not very good at it." "You saved me?" Emma whispered. "Not yet," Wyatt said. Confronting him was just the opening move. Men like Cody don't change because someone hits them once. They escalate, they retaliate. His ego is bruised, and he's going to want to restore it, which means... A sharp knock at the door cut him off. Havoc was on his feet instantly, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Wyatt motioned for Emma to stay quiet, moving to the door with fluid, silent steps. He looked through the peephole. 2 Port Hadley police cruisers were parked outside, their lights dark. 3 officers stood at the door, including Officer Kramer. Behind them, engine running, was a familiar black pickup truck. Wyatt's jaw tightened. That had been faster than expected. He opened the door, stepping out and closing it behind him, blocking the officer's view of Emma. "Officers, is there a problem?" Kramer's expression was smug. "We've had a complaint. You assaulted Cody Brennan at the Anchor. That's not what happened. He's got witnesses. Says you attacked him unprovoked in the bathroom. And you believed him. We need you to come with us to answer some questions." Wyatt's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to that cold, flat register. "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet. We just want to talk." "Then I decline. If you want to arrest me, do it. Otherwise, I'm done talking." From the truck, Cody emerged, his face bruised, his movements careful. He approached with Tyler and Ben flanking him, a predatory smile on his face. "That's him," Cody said, pointing. "That's the psycho who attacked me. I want him arrested." Kramer looked uncomfortable, caught between duty and the reality of Brennan influence. "Sir, you need to come with us." Wyatt stood perfectly still. "I'm not going anywhere." The tension ratcheted up. One of the other officers, a man in his 40s with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. His name tag read Morrison, and unlike Kramer, his eyes were sharp and assessing. "Hold on," Morrison said. "Let me get this straight. You, Cody Brennan, are claiming this man attacked you without provocation." "That's right." Morrison looked at Wyatt, really looked at him. The bearing, the controlled stillness, the gray eyes that held depths of professional violence. "And what's your side?" "He swung first," Wyatt said simply. "I defended myself. He's upset because he lost." "He's lying," Cody shouted. Morrison held up a hand. "Let me see some ID." Wyatt pulled out his military ID, handing it over. Morrison examined it, his expression shifting subtly as he read the designation. Lieutenant Commander, Naval Special Warfare Command. The sergeant handed it back, his demeanor changing completely. "Navy SEAL?" "Yes, sir." Morrison turned to Cody. "You're telling me you threw a punch at a Navy SEAL?" "I didn't know, because if that's what happened," Morrison continued, his voice hardening, "then you got off light. A man with his training could have put you in the hospital without breaking a sweat." Cody's face reddened. "My father is going to hear about this. You're protecting some outsider over you assaulting someone," Morrison said flatly. "Yeah, I am. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your truck. You're going to go home. And if I hear one more complaint about this man, I'm going to start investigating what really happened this morning with that homeless woman and her dog." Cody's eyes went wide with shock. You can't." "I absolutely can. Now go." Cody looked to Kramer for support, but the younger officer was staring at the ground, unwilling to meet his gaze. With a final venomous glare at Wyatt, Cody climbed back into his truck. The engine roared, and the vehicle disappeared into the night. Morrison turned to Wyatt. "Commander Kane, I apologize. The Brennans have a lot of influence here, but not with me. If you have a minute, I'd like to hear what really happened this morning." Wyatt nodded. "Come inside." Emma's statement, combined with Wyatt's testimony and Morrison's skeptical re-examination of the physical evidence, painted a clear picture. Morrison took detailed notes, his expression growing darker with each revelation. This Matches 3 other complaints we've had about Cody over the years," he said. "Nothing ever stuck because people were too afraid to push it. But if you're willing to be a witness—" "I am," Wyatt said. "Then I'll file this properly. It won't make you popular with certain people in this town, but it's the right thing." After Morrison left, Emma turned to Wyatt, her expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "The police actually listened. Because of you. Because Morrison is a good cop," Wyatt corrected. "But yes, being military helps. People listen differently." "Cody won't stop," Emma said quietly. "You humiliated him. He's going to want revenge." Wyatt's expression was carved from stone. "I'm counting on it." Over the next 3 days, Wyatt moved with methodical precision. He secured Emma a spot at Port Hadley's single homeless shelter, a clean room with a bed and a door that locked. He helped her get a new ID card through the county services office. He found her a part-time job at the marina, nothing glamorous but steady work with steady pay. And he trained her. Not in combat. She wasn't a fighter, and he had no intention of making her one. But he taught her awareness. How to recognize when someone was following her. How to read body language. How to trust her instincts. How to make herself a harder target. Havoc became her shadow. The dog, sensing her vulnerability, appointed himself her protector. He walked with her to work, waited patiently outside the marina office, and walked her home. At night, he slept beside her bed, his ears always alert. "He's yours now," Wyatt said on the 3rd evening, watching Havoc rest his head on Emma's knee. "He's chosen you." "I can't take your dog," Emma protested. "He's not my pet," Wyatt said. "He's my partner, and partners know when someone needs protection more than I do. Besides, I'll be leaving soon. My leave is up in 2 weeks. He'll be better off with you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. You just need to keep going. Keep fighting. Don't let them win." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "What about Cody? He's been quiet." "Too quiet," Wyatt agreed. "Which means he's planning something. Men like him don't forgive humiliation. They just wait for the right moment." Wyatt's instincts proved correct on the 4th night. He was in his cabin, reviewing case law on animal cruelty charges, preparing for the likelihood that Cody would lawyer up and try to bury the complaint, when his phone rang. It was Morrison. "Kane, we've got a problem," the sergeant said, his voice tight. "I just got a call from the county prosecutor. The Brennan family attorney, some shark from Portland, filed a counter-complaint. They're claiming you assaulted Cody, that Emma fabricated the story about the dog to extort money, and they're pushing for your arrest." Wyatt's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the phone. "That's a lie. I know it's a lie. You know it's a lie. But they've got 3 witnesses, Tyler, Ben, and some bartender they've clearly paid off, all saying you attacked Cody without provocation. And Emma's credibility is being shredded. They're calling her an unstable transient with a history of mental illness." "Does she have a history?" "Who cares? She's the victim here." Morrison exhaled heavily. "But here's the worst part. The chief got a call from the mayor. The mayor got a call from Brennan Sr. The pressure is coming from the top. They want this buried, Kane, and they want you gone." Wyatt was quiet, his tactical mind working through scenarios. "What do you need from me?" "Honestly, I need evidence. Something solid that proves Cody's lying. Witness statements, physical evidence, anything that can't be dismissed or bought off. I'll get it, Wyatt said. How much time do I have? Maybe 48 hours before the chief caves to the pressure. After that, I can't protect you. Understood. Wyatt hung up and immediately called Emma. Pack a bag. You're moving to a different motel. Tonight. What? Why? They're escalating. I need you somewhere they can't find you while I work. 20 minutes later, he had Emma and Havoc secured in a motel 2 towns over, paid in cash, registered under a fake name. Then he returned to Port Hadley and began hunting. He started with the bartender at the Anchor, a man named Dennis, who had supposedly witnessed the bathroom assault. Wyatt found him leaving work at 2 a.m., walking to his car alone in the empty parking lot. Dennis, Wyatt called out, stepping from the shadows. The bartender jumped, his keys clattering to the asphalt. Jesus, who? He recognized Wyatt, and his face went pale. Stay away from me, man. I don't want any trouble. Then tell me the truth, Wyatt said, his voice calm. Did you actually see me assault Cody Brennan? I told the police what I saw. No, you told them what Cody paid you to say. How much? Dennis's resolve crumbled immediately. $500, okay? He said you beat him up and he needed witnesses. It wasn't my business. I just needed the money. So you committed perjury for $500? I didn't think... Start thinking now. Because when this goes to court, you're going to be asked to testify under oath. Are you really willing to commit a felony for Cody Brennan? Dennis shook his head frantically. No, I'm not. I'll tell them the truth. I'll say I didn't actually see anything. Good choice. 1 witness recanted, 2 to go. Tyler Marsh was harder to crack. Wyatt found him at the gym the next morning, spotted him as he prepared to lift an impressive stack of weights. He waited until Tyler was mid-rep, then stepped into his line of sight. The bar wobbled. Tyler racked it with a clang, sitting up, his face flushed. What do you want? The truth. I already gave my statement. You lied, Wyatt said flatly. You weren't in the bathroom, you didn't see anything. Cody told you what to say, and you did it because you're loyal to him, or scared of him, I'm not sure which. Tyler's jaw worked. You don't know anything about me. I know you were in the Marines, Wyatt said, nodding to the faded tattoo on Tyler's forearm, an eagle, globe, and anchor. 4 years, honorably discharged. You know the difference between right and wrong. You know what honor means. And right now, you're throwing it away to protect a coward who ran over a puppy for fun. Tyler's face contorted. He's my friend. No, he's not. Friends don't make you lie to the police. Friends don't put you at risk of perjury charges. You owe him nothing. But you owe yourself the truth. Tyler stared at him for a long moment, the weight of conflicting loyalties playing out on his face. Finally, he exhaled. I didn't see anything. I was at the table. I heard shouting, but I didn't see the fight. Will you tell that to Sergeant Morrison? Tyler nodded slowly. Yeah, I will. 2 down, 1 to go. Ben Collier was the weakest link, and Wyatt knew it. He found Ben at his parents' house, a modest home on the edge of town, and knocked on the door. Ben's mother answered, a tired-looking woman in her 50s. Is Ben home? Who's asking? A friend. It's important. She called Ben down. When he saw Wyatt, his face went white. I don't have anything to say to you. Yes, you do. Outside, now. Ben followed him onto the porch, his hands shaking. Wyatt didn't threaten him. He didn't need to. "I'm not mad at you, Ben," Wyatt said quietly. "I understand peer pressure. I understand fear. But right now you're helping destroy an innocent woman's life because you're too afraid to stand up to Cody. Is that really who you want to be?" "He'll destroy me," Ben whispered. "His family. They'll make sure I never work in this town again." "Then leave the town. Start over somewhere else. But don't sacrifice your integrity for someone who would throw you under the bus the second it was convenient." Ben's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to do." "Tell the truth. That's all. Just tell the truth." Ben nodded, wiping his face. Okay. I'll tell Morrison what really happened." 46 hours after Morrison's warning, Wyatt walked into the police station with all 3 witnesses. Morrison interviewed them separately, recording their statements. By the time he finished, the counter-complaint against Wyatt had collapsed completely. "The prosecutor is dropping all charges," Morrison said, a grim smile on his face. "And now I have enough to charge Cody with animal cruelty, filing a false police report, and witness tampering. The DA is interested." "Will it stick?" Wyatt asked. "Maybe. The Brennans will fight it. But you've given me a foundation. That's more than we've ever had." But Wyatt wasn't satisfied with maybe. He spent the next week conducting his own investigation, using skills honed in a dozen countries across 3 continents. He interviewed Emma's neighbors at the cannery, finding 2 who had heard the truck, who had seen the aftermath. He obtained security footage from a business across the street, low quality, but clear enough to show the black truck with Cody's distinctive light bar. And he found something else. Digging through public records, he discovered this wasn't Cody's first incident. 3 years ago, a similar complaint had been filed by a migrant worker. The man claimed Cody had deliberately struck his dog with a truck. The complaint had been withdrawn after the worker suddenly left town. No investigation, no follow-up. Wyatt brought everything to Morrison, who stared at the stack of evidence with something like awe. "This is more than I've ever seen on a case like this," he said. "You did in a week what our department couldn't do in 3 years. Because you're trying to work within a system designed to protect men like Cody," Wyatt said. "I don't have to play by those rules." Morrison met his gaze. "You know they're going to come after you harder now. The Brennans don't forgive, and they don't forget." "I'm counting on it," Wyatt said again. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Wyatt was walking back to his cabin one evening when a vehicle pulled up behind him, not Cody's truck, but a black SUV with tinted windows. 3 men got out, large and professional in a way that suggested private security, not local thugs. The lead man, mid-40s with a shaved head and cold eyes, stepped forward. "Mr. Kane, we need to have a conversation." "About?" "About you leaving Port Hadley. Tonight. Permanently." Wyatt's expression didn't change. "And if I don't?" "Then things get complicated. See, Mr. Brennan is willing to make this easy. He'll drop all charges, forget this whole thing happened if you just walk away. But if you insist on pushing this, if you insist on testifying, then we'll be forced to make things difficult." "Difficult how?" The man smiled thinly. "Let's just say accidents happen, especially to people who don't have anyone watching their back." Wyatt had been trained to assess threats instantly. These men were professionals, not military, but corporate security, the kind hired to intimidate rather than kill. They were confident because they were used to targets who backed down. "I'm not leaving." Wyatt said quietly. The man's smile faded. "That's disappointing. We hoped you'd be reasonable." He nodded to his companions, who began to spread out, flanking positions. Classic intimidation tactics, and then Havoc appeared. The dog had been ranging ahead during the walk, investigating the tree line, but he had doubled back at the first sign of confrontation, emerging from the shadows with his lips pulled back, exposing impressive teeth. His growl was low, continuous, and absolutely terrifying. The three men froze. "That's Havoc," Wyatt said conversationally. "He's trained to neutralize hostile targets on command. If I say one word, he'll go for the nearest throat. He's fast, he's accurate, and he doesn't stop until I tell him to. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your vehicle. You're going to tell Brennan Sr. that his son is going to answer for what he did. And if any of you, or anyone Brennan sends, comes near me or Emma again, I will make sure the entire story, the cover-up, the intimidation, all of it, ends up on the front page of every newspaper in Oregon. Do you understand?" The lead man's jaw worked. He was calculating odds, weighing orders against survival. Finally, he raised his hand slightly. "We'll relay your message." They retreated to the SUV. Wyatt watched until the taillights disappeared. Havoc remained tense, his body coiled until Wyatt gave him the release command. "Stand down, boy. Good work." The dog relaxed, his tail wagging once and pressed against Wyatt's leg. That night, Wyatt made one final call, not to Morrison, but to a contact at the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. He explained the situation, provided evidence of the intimidation attempt, and invoked a little-known provision that allowed active-duty service members to request federal intervention when threatened by organized criminal activity. By morning, 2 NCIS agents were in Port Hadley, interviewing witnesses and examining evidence. The case had been elevated beyond local jurisdiction. The trial took 3 months. Cody Brennan, represented by a team of expensive attorneys, fought every charge. But the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the recanted witness statements, the pattern of prior complaints, all of it painted a picture of a man who had used his family's wealth and influence to escape accountability for years. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: animal cruelty, filing a false police report, witness tampering, and attempted intimidation of a federal witness. Cody Brennan was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, and community service at the local animal shelter. His driver's license was suspended. And, perhaps most painfully for him, his father publicly disowned him, cutting him off financially to protect the family's reputation. Wyatt sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, Emma beside him. When it was over, she turned to him with tears streaming down her face. "He's actually going to jail," she whispered. "For Scout. For me. He's actually being punished." "Justice is slow," Wyatt said, "but it catches up eventually." Outside the courthouse, Morrison approached. "Hell of a thing, Kane. You did in 3 months what this town couldn't do in a generation." "I had help." "Still, you made a difference." Wyatt nodded. His leave was over. He was due back at his base in Virginia in 3 days, but he had one more thing to do. Wyatt found Emma at her new apartment, a small studio the county had helped her secure through a housing assistance program. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She had steady work now at the marina, and she was taking online classes to finish her GED. Havoc lay at her feet, content and protective. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Wyatt said, "heading back to Virginia." Emma's face fell. I knew this was coming, but I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life. Wyatt shook his head. You saved your own life, Emma. I just gave you a chance. What you do with it is up to you. He crouched down, scratching Havoc behind the ears. The dog looked up at him with soulful eyes. Take care of her, boy, Wyatt murmured. That's your mission now. Havoc licked his hand, a rare display of affection. Emma knelt beside them. What will you do when you go back? What I've always done. Keep fighting. Keep protecting people who can't protect themselves. He met her gaze. But I'll be better at it now. You reminded me why it matters. How? Because you didn't give up. Even when you had nothing, even when you'd lost everything, you kept going. That's courage, Emma. Real courage, the kind that matters more than any firefighter mission. She hugged him then, sudden and fierce. Wyatt stiffened. Physical affection was still foreign to him, but slowly he returned the embrace. If you ever need anything, he said quietly, you call me. Doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing. You call. I will. Wyatt Kane drove out of Port Hadley at dawn, the fog rolling in off the Pacific one last time. In his rearview mirror, the town disappeared into the gray. He had come here broken, trying to forget. He was leaving with purpose restored. The truth he'd learned in that small coastal town was simple but profound. Heroism wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It was about standing up when others walked away. It was about using strength to protect, not to dominate. It was about refusing to let cruelty go unchallenged, even when challenging it cost you something. Emma had survived because she refused to give up. Scout had died protecting the person he loved, and Wyatt had remembered that his training, his skills, his capacity for violence, all of it was meant to serve something larger than himself. Heroes didn't wear capes. They didn't wait for perfect moments. They simply showed up when they were needed and did what needed to be done. As he drove, his phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Havoc and I are going to the beach today. He says thank you, so do I. Wyatt smiled, a rare, genuine expression. He had 30 days of leave and had spent it becoming something better than a weapon. He had become a guardian, and wherever the Navy sent him next, whatever mission came down, he would carry that with him. He would remember the small acts of courage mattered just as much as the large ones. He would remember that protecting the powerless was the highest calling. He would remember Scout. He would remember Emma, and he would be ready the next time someone needed him. Because that's what warriors did. They showed up, they stood firm, and they protected those who couldn't protect themselves, always. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Was it Havoc's loyalty, Wyatt's protection, or the moment justice was served? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.